Mr Chairman, I want to pick up on referring to the 10 amendments, substantive amendments that I've put forward on this part, on Part 1. Where I was at before was looking at amendments around Section 8A and 8B, and they're essentially to restrict the information flow to New Zealand so that the information gathered by the GCSB under 8A and 8B doesn't travel offshore, which has apparently, for what we're told, has been the practice in the past, is to send all this information offshore. But I want to talk a little bit about 8C and my amendment under Supplementary Order Paper 319 about 8C. The amendment there is to essentially remove 8C, and the reason for that is that I think we've already seen the threat that 8C poses to our democracy. So 8C basically says the Defence Force, the police and the SAS can use the GCSB to spy on New Zealanders. That's what it says. Now, we know that the Defence Force thinks that investigative journalists are subversives. Right? So under the NZ-SAS Act, for example, subversives is part of the definition of protecting the security. So they're protecting New Zealand against subversives. So it becomes, journalists become a legitimate target once they are defined as subversives, as the New Zealand Defence Force believes journalists to be. So once journalists become subversives and hence a legitimate target of surveillance, Defence can go to the GCSB and say, help us out to spy on journalists, because journalists are subversives, as we all know, and hence it's legitimate for us to ask you to spy on them. This, I think, demonstrates the problem with 8C, and it's why we're trying to delete it under Supplementary Order Paper 319. I'd also like to make a comment on Mr Dunn's amendments, which we will be supporting because they do provide minor improvements to the bill, and we'll vote for minor improvements. I would refer in particular to the review process that Mr Dunn has put in place. That review process is completely meaningless. It is like the MMP review. Remember the MMP review? The government said, oh, we're going to have a review of MMP if the referendum votes for MMP. The Electoral Commission, the independent umpire, suggested a bunch of changes to MMP, and the government didn't like them for partisan political reasons, so implemented none of them. So I'm afraid the review that Mr Dunn has got is meaningless. We'll support it, but frankly, it doesn't fix up the bill. The next supplementary order paper I wanted to talk about was Supplementary Order Paper 309. The effect of my amendment here is essentially to revert to the original Section 14 of the Government Communications Security Bureau Act 2003. So that is to revert to the situation that Parliament believed it had passed in 2003 that prevented the GCSB from spying on New Zealanders. Now, if you don't believe that that's what Parliament voted for, you should read the debate in 2003. I've been on the Intelligence and Security Committee dealing with this bill, reading the debate from 2003, and it is remarkable that, for example, Tony Ryle, who is also now a member of the Intelligence and Security Committee, spoke at length about how the 2003 bill, Section 14 of the 2003 bill, absolutely forbids and prohibits the GCSB from spying on New Zealanders. And he said anybody else who argues anything else is a conspiracy theorist. He said they're slightly strange people who think the GCSB is going to be able to spy on New Zealanders. That's what Tony Ryle said in the debate about the 2003 Act when it got passed. And so that's what Section 14, the existing Section 14 of the GCSB Act 2003 says, is that the GCSB can't spy on New Zealanders. Now, the GCSB said, we don't care what the law says, we're going to spy on New Zealanders because we want to, and they went ahead and did it and broke the law. We've never seen the legal opinion from the Inspector General of Intelligence and Security saying that it's arguable whether they broke the law, because the government won't release that legal opinion because they know that it's bunkum. The GCSB clearly did breach the basic rights of 88 New Zealanders by spying on them against the law and clearly breaching Section 14. So my supplementary order paper or amendment number 309 is essentially to revert back to the original meaning that Parliament supported in 2003 when it voted for the Act, which was that you're simply not allowed to spy on New Zealanders. We think that that is fundamental to why the GCSB was established. I'd also just like to touch on a couple of other supplementary order papers, 322, which basically stops the unwarranted actions of the GCSB. Section 16 of the Act allows essentially the GCSB to engage in unwarranted interception. So they can intervene. Mr Chair. Mr Chair,
I'm
Mr
going
Chair.
to hear Andrew Little.
Mr Chairman.